Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Pittsburgh Steelers star linebacker heading to Pro Bowl. Pittsburgh Steelers star linebacker Patrick Queen is heading to the Pro Bowl. Queen was selected as an alternate for Baltimore Ravens linebacker Roquan Smith, who pulled out of the games. Queen is now a two-time Pro Bowler after making his first Pro Bowl in 2023 as a member of the Ravens. He was also selected as a second-team All-Pro in 2023, though this year was a rockier year for Queen. The Steelers signed Queen to a 3-year, $41 million contract that will keep him with the team through the 2026 season. With money already sunken into the position with Roquan Smith, the Baltimore Ravens had to let Queen walk. Queen was notably upset the Ravens never offered him a deal to even think about returning. In his first season with the Steelers, Queen had an up-and-down season, and it did not go as well as the Steelers hoped. He played well in some aspects, but in others, he struggled and did not have great eye discipline or processing. Either way, Queen will be back in 2025 and core piece of the Steelers' defense in the future. He needs to bounce back, though, as he enters the second year of a 3-year deal. Pittsburgh Steelers NFL draft plans emerge with huge hints. The Pittsburgh Steelers never hide the positions they target in the NFL draft, and 2025 appears to be no different. Pittsburgh is focusing heavily on the defensive line, and on Wednesday, they huddled in on a new position, wide receiver. The Steelers were still focused on defensive line. Expect them to do that in this draft. It is too deep of a group, and a double dip makes some sense. Defensive coordinator Terrell Austin and head coach Mike Tomlin watched closely at the defensive line once again for much of the practice, signaling the team's interest there. However, they did not just focus on the defensive line, but moved towards wide receivers, too. Offensive coordinator Arthur Smith and general manager Omar Khan heavily watched the wide receivers while Mike Tomlin flipped back and forth between the defensive line and wide receivers. Today, Tomlin seemed extra active with both groups, even challenging some players to go against one another in one-on-ones. The Steelers' top two priorities remain wide receiver and defensive line. As the Las Vegas Raiders try to inch back towards contention, Pete Carroll was brought in as the team's new head coach. Las Vegas' next step is now finding their quarterback. Due to their time spent together on the Seattle Seahawks, free agent Russell Wilson has already been connected to the Raiders. However, Carroll was quick to pump the brakes on a reunion via the What the Football podcast. It's so early and we're in the midst of trying to find the puzzle pieces, not even putting them together yet, so I can't say, Carroll said. Free agency hasn't come yet. Still, Carroll will be keeping his eyes peeled for a quarterback once the free agency period begins. I promise you, if you're a real competitor, you're not letting options get away from you, Carroll concluded. Carroll was Wilson's head coach throughout his entire 10-year career with the Seahawks. The quarterback threw for 37,059 yards and 292 touchdowns, being voted a Pro Bowler 9 times. Carroll and Wilson even won a Super Bowl together. While their spark ultimately fizzled out, the pair knows how to succeed on the gridiron. But at this stage of his career, Wilson would seemingly be more of a bridge quarterback than a long-term answer. He spent the 2024 campaign with the Pittsburgh Steelers, throwing for 2,482 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. However, the Steelers went just 6-5 with Wilson under center, albeit still making the playoffs. Neither Gardner Minshew nor Aidan O'Connell shined during their opportunities in 2024. Pete Carroll will likely want to bring in his own quarterback to mold for the future. But as they find the future, Carroll could look to the past. Russell Wilson clearly understands Carroll's system and would help make the head coach's transition easier in Vegas. But for now, that is all speculation. Carroll is still getting set up in his new digs and setting the foundation for the organization. Once the Raiders start thinking about roster construction, perhaps their Wilson pursuit gets a bit more serious. Russell Wilson further linked to Raiders by ex-Pete Carroll assistant. After the 2024 NFL season came to an end, it looked like Russell Wilson would probably re-sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers as their next starting quarterback, at least until Pete Carroll was hired by the Las Vegas Raiders. Suddenly, the Raiders, who haven't had a long-term starting quarterback since they drafted Derek Carr out of Fresno State in the second round of the 2014 NFL Draft, had a ready-made quarterback lined up with extensive experience playing under their new coach at 36. He could actually stick around for a little while, allowing the team to draft a new quarterback and develop him into the future with no real pressure to see the field as a rookie. Now granted, when it comes to NFL rumors in January, fans pretty much have to take any piece of information they receive with a grain of salt, right? Certainly, but in his 2025 NFL free agency primer for ESPN, Matt Bowen provided a very interesting piece of information from ESPN senior NFL reporter Jeremy Fowler, who has talked to former Carroll assistants who believe a reunion is possible, if not likely. Is a reunion with Pete Carroll, now Las Vegas head coach, really viable? Two ex-Carroll assistants believe they can coexist, with one taking it as far as predicting that Wilson will sign there, adding that the two rekindled their relationship a little over a year ago after a rocky ending to Seattle, Fowler wrote. I think both would be open to it, especially with this QB class the way it is, another ex-Carroll coach said. The Raiders' plans are uncertain, but this at least seems like a possibility. Interesting stuff, right? Well, it actually might get even more so for Raider Nation, as Bowen believes that there might not be a particularly robust market for Wilson's services, listing him as the 42nd ranked free agent in this year's class. In 11 starts for the Steelers, Wilson completed 63.7% of his throws for 2,482 yards and 16 touchdowns, registering a QBR of 51.4, 22nd, Bowen wrote. He can still throw with pace and touch downfield, and he would benefit from a system that's heavy in play action. But with his reduced mobility, Wilson isn't a creator outside of structure at this stage of his career. Alright, so is Wilson that low on Bowen's list because he's a somewhat diminished player, or because there really isn't that big of a market for his services, with the Raiders and Steelers likely competing for his services one-on-one? Still, considering Tom Brady is leading the way in Las Vegas, and he knows a thing or two about playing quarterback on the wrong side of 35 as well as anyone else, the Raiders might be able to put together an offer that's enticing enough to lure the former Seahawk to Nevada for another shot as a Super Bowl trophy. And you fan? What do you think of the situation of Russell Wilson? Leave your opinion in the comments.